The phone in the Alpha King's war room rang at 3 a.m. with a sound that made every wolf in the palace freeze. That line, the red emergency phone buried under centuries of protocol, hadn't rung in 50 years. When it did, it meant war, assassination, or the end of everything. King Theron Blackthorn was in the middle of a territorial dispute when the shrill ring cut through heated arguments. His hand moved to the receiver before his advisors could even process what was happening. "This is the Alpha King," he said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. What came next wasn't a general reporting an attack or a beta announcing a crisis. It was a child's voice, small and scared, but steady. "Hello? I found a lady on the street. She's really cold and she won't wake up. The phone in her pocket said to call this number if anything bad happened." Every wolf in the room went utterly still. Theron's second in command, Marcus, watched the color drain from his king's face, something he'd never seen in 30 years of service. "Where are you?" Theron's voice was controlled, but his hand had gone white-knuckled on the phone. "Riverside District, near the old bakery with the blue door. It's really dark here and I'm scared, but I didn't want to leave her alone." "Stay exactly where you are. I'm coming now. What's your name?" "Finn. I'm 8. Is the lady going to be okay?" Theron was already moving, his cloak billowing behind him as he strode toward the door. "You did everything right, Finn. Keep her warm. I'll be there in 5 minutes." He disconnected and turned to Marcus. "Assemble the royal guard. Now." "My lord, what?" "It's Sarah." The name came out like a wound reopening. "My daughter's in Riverside, unconscious." The room erupted in controlled chaos as the most powerful wolves in the kingdom mobilized for a rescue mission that should have been impossible, because Sarah Blackthorn had been missing for 8 years. And until this moment, the Alpha King had believed she was dead. The Discovery Riverside District lived up to its name in the worst way, crumbling buildings that sagged toward the polluted water, streets where even wolves walked in packs after dark. It was the kind of place where people minded their own business and asked no questions, where the lost came to disappear. Finn sat on the cold pavement next to the unconscious woman, his thin jacket draped over her shoulders. He'd done exactly what his mom taught him. When someone needs help, you help, even if you're scared. The lady had omega scent markers, faint but unmistakable. Finn didn't know much about pack dynamics yet, but he knew omegas were supposed to be protected, cherished. This one looked like she'd been doing the protecting herself for a very long time. She was thin, too thin. Her clothes were worn but clean, carefully mended. Dark hair fell across a face that would have been beautiful if it wasn't so pale, so drawn. But it was her hands that Finn kept staring. 8. They were scarred, calloused, the hands of someone who'd worked hard for everything. Around her neck, barely visible beneath a threadbare scarf, was a silver pendant. Finn had noticed it when he'd checked for a pulse. His mom was a nurse and had taught him, and seen it was shaped like a crescent moon, with a wolf's profile howling at the center, the royal seal of the Blackthorn pack. Finn didn't understand what that meant, but he understood the phone. It was old, the screen cracked, but when he'd turned it on looking for emergency contacts, there was only one number saved. Just one, labeled, "If something happens." So he'd called it. Now, headlights cut through the darkness. Not just one vehicle, but 6. Black SUVs with tinted windows, the kind that meant either very bad news or very important people. Finn stood up quickly, positioning himself between the unconscious woman and the approaching vehicles. His heart hammered, but he'd called them. He had to be brave. The first SUV's door opened before the vehicle fully stopped. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, with silver streaking through black hair. He wore a long coat over what looked like expensive combat gear, and his eyes. Finn had never seen eyes like that. They glowed amber in the darkness, ancient and powerful and completely focused on the woman lying on the ground. "Finn?" The man's voice was gentler than his appearance suggested. "Yes, sir." Finn's voice only shook a little. "You did well. Thank you for protecting her. The man knelt beside the woman, and something in his controlled expression cracked. His hand trembled as it reached for her face, then pulled back, as if he was afraid touching her might make her disappear. "Sarah," he whispered. Then louder, with command that made even Finn straighten instinctively. "Medical team, now!" People poured from the other vehicles. A woman in tactical gear who moved like a soldier carried a medical kit. 2 massive men took up protective positions. A younger man with kind eyes knelt beside Finn. "I'm Marcus," he said quietly. "The king's second. You probably saved her life tonight." "Is she really his daughter?" Finn whispered back. Marcus's expression went complicated, grief and hope mixed together. "She is. She's been missing for 8 years. We thought—" He stopped, then smiled sadly. "Let's just say you gave the king back something he thought he'd lost forever." The medical woman, Dr. Reeves, someone called her, was working quickly, checking vitals, setting up an IV with practiced efficiency. "She's severely malnourished, dehydrated, and hypothermic. Looks like she's been running on fumes for weeks, maybe months, but she's stable. We need to move her now." Theron finally touched his daughter, gathering her carefully into his arms like she might shatter. For just a moment the Alpha King disappeared, and Finn saw only a father holding his child. "Sir," one of the guards said urgently, "we need to leave. This district isn't secure." "Then secure it," Theron said, not looking up from Sarah's face. "I'm not moving her until Dr. Reeves says it's safe." "The vehicle is climate-controlled and fully equipped," Dr. Reeves said gently. "She'll be safer there than here, my lord." Theron nodded once and stood, cradling Sarah against his chest. He looked at Finn, and in those ancient amber eyes was gratitude so fierce it felt like a physical thing. "What's your full name, Finn?" "Finn Cooper, sir. I live with my mom in Building 6. "Building 6, Theron repeated, and Marcus was already making notes. "You'll both be moved to better housing by week's end. And Finn," he paused, "when Sarah wakes up, I'll tell her you kept her safe when she couldn't keep herself safe. That's not a small thing. That's everything." They loaded Sarah into the lead vehicle. Theron climbed in beside her, never letting go of her hand. Dr. Reeves followed, already hanging new IV bags. Marcus turned to Finn one more time. "Someone will contact your mother tomorrow. The king takes care of those who take care of his own." He smiled. "You did good, kid. Really good." The convoy pulled away, leaving Finn alone on the dark street with his thin jacket and a story no one would believe. But in his pocket was a card Marcus had pressed into his hand. Heavy paper, embossed with the royal seal, with a single phone number. "If you or your mother ever need anything," Marcus had said. "Anything at all." Finn looked at the card, then at the spot where the woman, Sarah, the king's daughter, had been lying. He'd done what his mom taught him. He'd helped someone who needed help. He just hadn't expected that someone to be a lost princess. The palace. The Royal Medical Wing had been built to handle everything from battlefield injuries to poison attempts. It had never been meant for this, for watching the Alpha King sit vigil beside a daughter who'd been a ghost for 8 years, who'd come back as broken as she'd left. Dr. Reeves worked efficiently, hooking Sarah to monitors, establishing better IV access, running blood tests. Each result made her expression grimmer. "Talk to me," Theron said, never taking his eyes off Sarah's face. "Severe malnutrition. She's been skipping meals, probably for months. Dehydration. Exhaustion so profound her body just shut down." Dr. Reeves paused. "She has old injuries, healed wrong. Broken ribs that set poorly. Scarring consistent with physical labor beyond what an Omega should endure. And suppressants. She's been taking heavy-duty Omega suppressants. The kind that hide heat cycles, mask scent markers, basically suppress everything that identifies someone as Omega. Long-term use causes severe side effects. The malnutrition, the exhaustion, even the collapse. She's been using them for years." Theron's hand tightened on Sarah's. She was hiding. From what? From me. He looked up, and for the first time since Marcus had known him, the Alpha King looked lost. She disappeared 8 years ago, right after... He stopped. Right after what, my lord? Right after I told her she had to accept the mate bond the council chose for her. That duty to the pack came before personal happiness, that she needed to stop being selfish and think about the kingdom. The words sat in the air like poison. She was 19, Theron continued, his voice hollow. She begged me to let her choose. Said the alpha they'd selected was cruel, that she'd seen how he treated omegas in his own pack. But the council insisted. Strong bloodlines, political alliance, all the usual justifications. And He looked at his daughter's gaunt face, at hands that told stories of hard work and harder choices. I chose the kingdom over her. I told her she was being dramatic, that she'd learn to love him, that sacrifice was the price of royalty. His voice cracked. 3 days later, she vanished. Left everything. Title, wealth, protection, family. Just disappeared into the night. Dr. Reeves said nothing, but her expression spoke volumes. We searched for years, Theron said. Every pack, every city, every territory. I thought she was dead. Thought maybe the mate I'd chosen for her had killed her when she refused, or that she'd been taken by rogues, or... He stopped. I never imagined she was out there alone, working herself to death to avoid coming back to me. She kept your emergency number, Dr. Reeves said quietly. Theron looked at the old phone they'd retrieved from Sarah's pocket. Cracked screen, battery dying, but that one number saved. Labeled if something happens. She kept one door open, Dr. Reeves continued. In case she needed you, that means something. Or she just wanted someone to know when she died. Before Dr. Reeves could respond, Sarah stirred. Just a small movement, her hand twitching in Theron's grip. Both of them went still. Sarah's eyes fluttered open, gray like storm clouds. They were unfocused at first, seeing nothing. Then awareness crept back, and with it, fear. She tried to pull away from Theron's hand, tried to sit up. The monitors beeped frantically as her heart rate spiked. Easy, Dr. Reeves said, moving to check the IV. You're safe. You're in... No. Sarah's voice was hoarse, barely there. Her eyes locked on Theron, and in them was something worse than fear. It was recognition, mixed with despair. No, 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 I can't be here. I can't... Sarah, please, don't! She managed to pull her hand free, pressing it against her chest like she was holding herself together. I got away. I got out. You can't... Her breath came in gasps. The mate bond, the council. I won't do it. I won't... There is no mate bond, Theron said, and the command in his voice cut through her panic like a knife. The engagement was broken 7 years ago. Alpha Gareth is dead, killed in a territorial dispute. You're not promised to anyone. Sarah stopped struggling, but she didn't relax. You're lying. I have never lied to you. You promised to protect me! The words burst out of her like a dam breaking. You promised Pack meant family, that Omegas were cherished, that I'd have choices. Then you sold me to a monster because the council said so. Each word hit Theron like a physical blow. I know. I went to his pack to visit. I saw how he treated his Omegas. Like property, like things. He broke one woman's arm because she spoke without permission. Another disappeared after rejecting his advances, and no one asked questions. But the council said he was suitable, that I was being difficult, that I needed to understand my place. I know, Theron said again, and his voice was breaking. I know, and I will regret it every day for the rest of my life. Do you know what it's like to run from your own father? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. To choose hunger and cold and loneliness over going home? To work 3 jobs just to afford suppressants so no alpha could scent what you are? To fall asleep every night terrified that someone found you? That you'd be dragged back and forced into a bond that would destroy you? No, but I found out what it's like to search for 8 years and find nothing. To attend memorial services for a daughter who might still be alive. To look at every young Omega and wonder if it's you. To pray to the moon goddess every night that you're safe, even if you're never coming home. They stared at each other, father and daughter, Alpha and Omega, two people who'd once been close and now had 8 years of pain between them. I can't stay, Sarah whispered. I can't be here. You collapsed from exhaustion and malnutrition, Dr. Reeves interjected firmly. You're not going anywhere until you're stable. That's not a request. Then I'm a prisoner. You're my daughter, Theron said quietly, and you're safe here. I swear it on my Alpha oath. No one will force you into any bond. No council decision will override your choice. You can leave the moment you're strong enough to walk out that door, and I won't stop you. You promise? I promise. But Sarah... He hesitated. Please don't. Please stay. Let me fix this. Let me be the father I should have been 8 years ago. Sarah closed her eyes. Tears slid down her hollow cheeks. The boy who found me, she said finally. Finn, is he okay? He's fine. We're moving his family to better housing, setting up a trust fund. He'll be taken care of. Good. She took a shaky breath. He was so brave. Just a little kid, and he stayed with me in the dark because he didn't want me to be alone. Like someone else I know, Theron said softly. You've always had a gift for seeing people who need help. Sarah opened her eyes, looking at him properly for the first time, really seeing him, the silver in his hair that hadn't been there before, the lines around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and endless searches. You look older, she said. 8 years of not knowing if you're alive will do that. I thought you'd be angry. I'm furious. His hand trembled slightly, but not at you. Never at you. I'm angry at myself for giving you a reason to run. Angry at a system that valued politics over people. Angry that my daughter, my brave, brilliant daughter, spent years hiding from her own family because I failed to protect her. I don't know if I can forgive you. I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking you to stay alive long enough to decide. They sat in silence as monitors beeped softly, and dawn light began filtering through the windows. Dr. Reeves made herself busy checking readings, giving them space. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice so quiet Theron had to lean forward to hear. There's something you should know, about why I collapsed, about why I was in Riverside. Tell me. I've been working at a shelter there, for Omegas escaping bad situations, forced bonds, abusive mates, packs that treat them like property. I've been helping them disappear, teaching them how to use suppressants safely, finding them places where they can start over. Theron went very still. That's dangerous work. Someone has to do it. The system doesn't protect them. You know it doesn't. And last night? Last night, an Alpha from the Northlands tracked one of our refugees. He came to the shelter with 3 pack enforcers. We got everyone out, but... She stopped, her breath catching. I've been running interference for 3 days straight. No sleep, no food, just moving people and covering tracks. I guess I pushed too hard. You've been running an underground railroad, Theron said slowly, under every pack's nose. For how long? 5 years. 5 years. He sat back, something like pride flickering across his face before the worry returned. How many? 73 Omegas. All safe, all living their own lives now. Sarah, I know it's illegal. I know it undermines pack authority. I know it's everything a royal shouldn't do. But I couldn't know what was happening and do nothing. Theron looked at his daughter. Exhausted, underfed, scarred from hard work, but with fire still burning in her storm-gray eyes. The same fire that had made her challenge him 8 years ago. The same fire he'd tried to extinguish because it was inconvenient. No, he said finally. You're everything a royal should be. You're just not what the council thinks a royal should be. There's a difference." "What does that mean?" "It means," he took a breath, "it means I've spent 8 years realizing I chose the wrong side. That preserving a broken system isn't the same as protecting your people. That maybe the reason you ran wasn't because you were weak, but because you were stronger than all of us combined." Sarah stared at him. "Who are you, and what did you do with my father?" Despite everything, Theron smiled. "Your father spent 8 years being haunted by the last thing his daughter said to him. Do you remember?" She did. Standing in his office, tears streaming down her, face, voice breaking. "When I'm gone, I hope you remember this. I hope you remember that you chose rules over me, that you taught me pack means family, then proved family means nothing when it's inconvenient. I hope it haunts you." "It did," Theron said quietly. "Every single day." 3 days after Sarah's collapse, she was strong enough to sit up without the room spinning. Dr. Reeves had forbidden her from leaving bed, but Sarah had negotiated her way to a chair by the window, where she could watch the palace gardens wake with spring. Theron visited every morning, never pushing, never demanding. Sometimes they talked about small things: the weather, books she'd read, meals she might tolerate. Sometimes they sat in silence, the 8 years between them too vast to cross with simple conversation. On the 4th morning, he arrived with a folder. "What's that?" Sarah asked, eyeing it warily. "Records." He set it on the table beside her. "Of every decision I've made regarding Omega rights since you left. I thought you should see them." Sarah opened the folder slowly. Inside were council meeting minutes, legislative proposals, veto notices. All stamped with the royal seal. All dated within the last 8 years. Proposal to restrict Omega movement between territories. Vetoed motion to enforce mandatory mate bonding by age 21. Vetoed request to eliminate Omega representation in pack councils. Vetoed page after page of blocked legislation, stopped policies, rejected proposals. And at the bottom, a newer document dated just 6 months ago. Royal Decree 847, Establishment of the Omega Protection Bureau. All Omegas granted right to refuse mate bonds without pack penalty. All forced bonding declared illegal under royal law. Enforcement begins immediately. Sarah looked up, eyes wide. "You did this?" "Too late to help you," Theron said quietly, "but hopefully in time to help others. The council must have fought you every step." "They did. They still do. Half of them think I've gone soft. The other half think I'm destroying tradition." He smiled grimly. "They're not entirely wrong about that last part." "Why?" Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. "Why now?" "Because I had 8 years to think about what you said. About pack meaning family until it's inconvenient. About rules mattering more than people." He met her eyes. "You were right. The system is broken. It's been broken for generations. We just called it tradition, so we didn't have to fix it." Before Sarah could respond, urgent footsteps echoed in the hallway. Marcus burst through the door, his usually composed face tight with tension. "My lord, we have a problem. The council has called an emergency session. They're demanding your presence immediately." "On what grounds?" Marcus glanced at Sarah. "They know about the shelter." Every atom of air seemed to leave the room. "How?" Sarah demanded, trying to stand. Dr. Reeves appeared from nowhere, gently but firmly pushing her back into the chair. "The Alpha from the Northlands, the one who tracked your refugee, filed a formal complaint with the council. He's claiming you're harboring his pack's property, undermining pack authority, and operating an illegal network." Marcus's jaw tightened. "He's demanding your arrest and extradition to his territory for punishment." Sarah's hands clenched on the chair arms. "His property was a 20-year-old Omega named Maya, who he beat so badly she couldn't walk for a week. She came to us half dead. We saved her life." "The council doesn't care about that," Marcus said. They care that you've been moving Omegas across territorial lines without pack permission. That's technically kidnapping under current law. Current law is wrong. I know. Marcus looked at Theron. But the Council has votes, and the Northlands Alpha has allies. If they push for formal charges... Theron stood, and the movement carried such authority that everyone else instinctively straightened. Then, let them push. Let's see what happens. My lord! I'm not handing my daughter over to a pack that treats Omegas like livestock. The Council wants a fight. They'll get one. Father, Sarah's voice stopped him at the door. Don't do this. Don't risk everything because of me. I knew what I was doing was illegal. I'll face the consequences. No. I'm not a child anymore. You can't just... You're right. You're not a child. Theron turned to face her fully. You're a grown woman who's been doing the work I should have been doing all along, who's been protecting people I swore an oath to protect, who's been more of a leader in exile than I was on a throne. His voice hardened. So no, I'm not protecting you like a child. I'm standing beside you like an ally. There's a difference. He left before she could argue, Marcus following. Dr. Reeves checked Sarah's vitals, frowning at her elevated heart rate. You need to rest. I need to know what's happening. What's happening is your father is about to go to war with his own council. Dr. Reeves smiled slightly. And knowing the Alpha King, he's going to enjoy it. The trial. The council chamber was carved from black stone that had witnessed 3 centuries of pack law. 12 seats formed a semicircle around a central floor where the accused stood. Above them all, elevated on a dais of polished obsidian, sat the Alpha King's throne. When Theron entered, the assembled council rose. Some out of respect, others out of centuries of protocol they couldn't break, even when they wanted to. Alpha Aldrich of the Northlands stood in the center floor, flanked by 2 advisors. He was a massive man, scarred and gray-bearded, with eyes like winter ice. The kind of Alpha who'd built his power on fear and maintained it with violence. Your Majesty, Council Elder Rothgar began, his voice carrying the weight of 80 years and countless power plays. We gather under urgent circumstances. Alpha Aldrich has brought serious charges regarding your daughter, Sarah Blackthorn. I'm aware. Theron took his seat, and the casual way he did it, like discussing whether, not his daughter's freedom, made several council members shift nervously. Then you know she's been operating an illegal network, Aldrich said, his voice like gravel. Stealing Omegas from their rightful packs, moving them across territories without permission, undermining the very foundation of pack law. I know she's been saving lives. She stole my property. Aldrich's fist crashed down on the speaking pedestal. An Omega bound to my pack by law. Her family owed me a blood debt. The girl was payment, as is our right under traditional law. Traditional law, Theron repeated, his voice dangerously soft. Tell me, Aldrich, this Omega, Maya, I believe, what was the blood debt? Her father damaged pack property during a hunt. What property? A fence? Broken during pursuit of game. Theron let the words hang in the air. A fence. You claimed a living person as payment for a broken fence. The debt is the debt. Value doesn't matter. It matters to me. Theron leaned forward. Council, let me be clear about what we're discussing. Alpha Aldrich used ancient debt law, which was meant to resolve serious grievances, to claim a young woman as permanent property over property damage worth perhaps 50 silver. He then beat her severely enough that she fled for her life. And now he's demanding I punish my daughter for saving that young woman from abuse. That's not, Aldrich started. I'm not finished. The command in Theron's voice made even the elder wolves flinch. You want to talk about undermining pack law? Let's talk about how you've twisted it into something that makes Omega's property instead of people. How you've used tradition as an excuse for cruelty. How you've made every young Omega in your territory terrified of making a single mistake, because it might mean being claimed by someone who sees them as things. The old ways are done. Theron stood, descending from the throne. I've tried to change things gradually, tried to reform the system from within, pass new laws, create protections. But you all fight me at every turn. You cling to tradition because it benefits you, regardless of who it destroys. Elder Hrothgar cleared his throat. Your Majesty, your personal feelings aside, the law is clear. Movement of Omegas across pack boundaries without proper authorization is illegal. Your daughter broke that law, repeatedly. The Council must respond, or we have no authority at all. Then change the law. Silence crashed through the chamber. Change it, Theron repeated. Right now, tonight. I'm invoking royal prerogative under the Ancient Covenant. Council members exchanged glances. Royal prerogative was a nuclear option, a power that let the king force legislation through without council vote, but only in matters of kingdom survival. It hadn't been used in over 100 years. You can't be serious, another elder said. This doesn't qualify. Doesn't it? Theron's eyes blazed. 8 years ago, my daughter, an Omega of royal blood, with every protection wealth and power could provide, chose to disappear rather than be forced into a bond with a cruel alpha. She chose hunger and hardship and danger over the safety of pack law. If that's not evidence of a broken system, what is? He turned to address the full council. Since then, 73 Omegas have made the same choice. 73 people so desperate they risked everything to escape situations their own packs should have protected them from. That's not isolated incidents. That's systemic failure. It's also systematic law-breaking, Aldrich interjected. Your daughter is a criminal. My daughter is a hero. Theron's voice cut like a blade. And if this council tries to punish her for doing what was right instead of what was legal, you'll learn exactly how far I'm willing to go to protect her. You'd threaten your own council? Hrothgar's voice was soft, dangerous. I'd remind my council who they serve. Not tradition, not their own power. The people, all the people, including the ones you've decided don't matter. The chamber erupted in argument. Alphas shouting, elders demanding order, years of political tension finally boiling over. Through it all, Theron stood silent and unmoved, waiting for the chaos to exhaust itself. It was Marcus who finally broke through the noise. He entered carrying a document sealed with the royal crest, moving quickly to Theron's side. My lord, he murmured quietly, you asked for precedent. I found something. Theron took the document, read it quickly, and something like satisfaction crossed his face. Enough. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried such command that every wolf fell silent. I was going to invoke royal prerogative, force change through authority, but I've found something better. Something you can't argue with because it comes from your own precious tradition. He held up the document. This is the Covenant of Shadows, written by the first Alpha King 300 years ago. The founding document of pack law. Let me read you Section 7. The chamber was utterly silent now. When those with power abuse it, when those without power suffer unjustly, when the law serves cruelty instead of justice, then any wolf, regardless of rank, has not just the right, but the duty to stand against it, to protect the vulnerable, to speak for the voiceless, to choose righteousness over obedience. Theron lowered the document, meeting each council member's eyes in turn. The first Alpha King built this system on a principle. Power exists to protect, not to dominate. That got lost somewhere in 3 centuries of tradition. But it's still law. First law, the foundation everything else is built on. He turned to Aldrich. My daughter didn't break pack law. She upheld its original purpose. She protected those who couldn't protect themselves. She chose righteousness over obedience. The Covenant of Shadows doesn't just permit what she did. It demands it. Aldrich's face had gone purple with rage. That's ancient history. It doesn't apply to modern. It's the foundation of every law you're citing against her, Theron interrupted. You can't claim it doesn't apply. Either the covenant matters or none of this does. Choose. Hrothgar studied the document, his ancient face unreadable. Finally, he spoke. The king is correct. The covenant supersedes all subsequent law. If Princess Sarah acted in accordance with its principles, he paused, then technically she committed no crime. Technically, Aldrich exploded, she stole from my pack. You claimed a person as property over a broken fence, Hrothgar said coldly. The covenant is very clear on abuse of power. I don't like the precedent this sets, but the law is the law. He looked at Theron. The charges are dismissed. Aldrich looked like he might physically attack someone. This is outrageous. The council has spoken, Theron said. Leave my territory, Aldrich, and if I hear of any Omega in your pack being claimed as payment for property damage again, I'll invoke the covenant against you personally. The Northland's Alpha stalked out, his advisors scrambling to follow. The council chamber buzzed with tense conversation. Theron turned to Hrothgar. I'm still changing the law, not through royal prerogative, through proper channels. I'll submit legislation reforming Omega protections, eliminating forced bonding, and restricting debt claims. And you're going to support it. What makes you think? Because if you don't, I'll make every session public. Let the people hear you argue why Omegas should be property, why tradition matters more than lives. See how long your political power lasts when your own packs know exactly what you stand for. Hrothgar's eyes narrowed, but he nodded slowly. You've changed, Your Majesty. No, Theron said quietly. I just finally started listening to someone who was right all along. Healing Sarah was asleep when Theron returned to the medical wing. She'd finally exhausted herself worrying, and Dr. Reeves had added something mild to her IV to help her rest. Theron sat in the chair beside her bed, watching the steady rise and fall of her breathing. 8 years he'd missed. 8 years of her life spent surviving instead of living, all because he'd chosen wrong when it mattered most. The charges are dismissed, he said softly, even though she couldn't hear. You're safe, and I'm going to make sure no one else has to run the way you did. Marcus appeared in the doorway. The council is in chaos. Half of them furious, the other half terrified. You meant what you said about making sessions public. I did. I know. Marcus smiled slightly. It's going to be ugly. Change usually is. Theron looked at his second in command, this wolf who'd searched beside him for 8 years, who'd never given up hope. Thank you. For the covenant document. For everything. I serve the king, Marcus said. Then, more quietly, and I'm glad she's home. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah slowly regained her strength. The palace kitchens prepared careful meals to rebuild her weight. Dr. Reeves monitored her recovery with fierce dedication, and Theron visited every day, never pushing, always patient. They talked more as Sarah healed, about the shelter, about the Omegas she'd helped, about the underground network she'd built. Theron listened to everything, asked questions, made notes. What are you doing? Sarah asked one afternoon, watching him write. Learning. You've built something that works, something that actually helps people. I want to understand it so we can make it official. Official? The Omega Protection Bureau I established needs leadership. Someone who understands what Omegas actually face, not what we imagine they face. Someone who's done the work. He met her eyes. I'd like it to be you. Sarah stared at him. You want me to run a government bureau? I want you to keep doing what you've been doing, but with resources and legal backing. No more scraping by, no more hiding, no more risking yourself because you're the only one standing between vulnerable people and those who'd hurt them. The council will never... The council doesn't get a vote on royal appointments. That's my prerogative. He smiled slightly. One of the few that doesn't require their approval. I don't know if I can work within the system. Then change the system from inside. You've already proven you can do the impossible. Imagine what you could do with actual support. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Finally, I need to think about it. Take all the time you need. Theron stood to leave, then paused. Sarah? I know I don't have the right to ask, but would you stay? Not in the medical wing, but here, at the palace. Let me try to be the father I should have been. I don't know if I can forgive you yet. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just a chance to earn it. Eventually. Someday. Sarah looked at this man who'd been her hero once, then her jailer. Now something complicated she didn't have words for yet. Okay, she said quietly. I'll stay. For now. The relief on Theron's face was so profound, it made her chest ache. The reunion. A month after Sarah's collapse, she was finally strong enough for short trips outside the palace. Dr. Reeves had approved a visit to Riverside, with guards and strict time limits. Sarah insisted on one stop. Building 6. Finn answered the door, his mother Kate hovering protectively behind him. When he saw Sarah, healthy now, color in her cheeks, no longer unconscious on cold pavement, his face lit up. You're okay. Thanks to you. Sarah knelt to his level. You saved my life, Finn. You were brave and kind when you didn't have to be. That's rare. Mom says you're a princess. Finn's eyes were wide. Technically, yes. But more importantly, I'm someone who tries to help people who need help. Like you did. Finn's mom, Kate, was staring at the royal guards positioned discreetly down the hall, at Sarah's clothes that were clearly expensive, despite being simple, at the whole impossible situation. Your Highness, we never expected... She stopped, overwhelmed. You raised a son who sees someone in trouble and helps them, even when it's scary. That's everything. Sarah stood, addressing Kate directly. The king mentioned moving you to better housing. Has that happened? They offered us a place in the North Quarter, Kate said, still looking dazed. 3 rooms, real windows, near a good school. I thought it was a mistake. Not a mistake. You deserve it. Finn deserves it. Sarah pulled an envelope from her pocket and handed it to Kate. This is from me, not the king. A trust fund for Finn's education, healthcare, whatever he needs, and my personal number. If you ever need anything, call. Kate's hands trembled as she took the envelope. This is too much. Your son kept me alive when I couldn't keep myself alive. There's no such thing as too much. Finn was studying Sarah with the intense focus only children can manage. Are you going to help more people, like before? Yes, but differently now. Bigger. Better. She smiled at him. Someone recently reminded me that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is help, even when you're scared. I'm going to keep doing that. Good, Finn said seriously. People need help sometimes. After they left Building 6, Sarah stood on the street where Finn had found her, where she'd collapsed after 3 days running, after 8 years surviving, after a lifetime of trying to be strong enough. What are you thinking? Marcus asked quietly. He'd insisted on leading her security detail personally. I'm thinking I spent 8 years running from my father because I thought pack law and royal duty meant cruelty dressed up as tradition. She looked at the palace in the distance, gleaming in afternoon light. Turns out sometimes it just takes one person refusing to accept that to start changing things. You changed a lot more than things, Marcus said. You changed the king. Or maybe he was always capable of change. He just needed a reason. She smiled slightly. Either way, I think I'm ready to try. To work with him instead of against the system. To see if we can actually fix what's broken. The council won't make it easy. Good things never are. Sarah started walking back toward the waiting vehicle. Stronger now. Steadier. But I've spent 8 years doing hard things. What's a little palace politics compared to that? Marcus laughed, falling into step beside her. Your father's going to love working with you. We'll see. We have a lot to work through still. But you're staying. I'm staying. 6 months later, the Omega Protection Bureau occupied an entire wing of the royal palace, staffed by former shelter workers, reformed elders, and Omegas who'd survived the old system and wanted to dismantle it. Sarah stood at the head of a conference table, presenting to the council. She'd gained back the weight she'd lost, traded her worn clothes for ones that balanced practicality with her new position. But her eyes still carried that fierce determination, that refusal to accept that suffering was inevitable. Our network has processed 217 cases in 6 months, she said, pulling up statistics. Every Omega who came to us claiming abuse was investigated. 143 cases were substantiated. Of those, 89 Omegas chose to leave their packs with our assistance. The rest chose to stay with new protections in place. And the Alphas who protested? Elder Rothgar asked. He still didn't like the changes, but he'd kept his word about supporting the legislation. 71 filed formal complaints. Every complaint was investigated by neutral parties. 30 were found to have legitimate grievances about process. We addressed those. 41 were found to be attempting to reclaim Omegas they'd been abusing. Those complaints were dismissed. You're creating chaos in established packs, another elder said. I'm creating accountability, Sarah corrected. Alphas who treat their pack members well have nothing to fear from us. Alphas who abuse their power are learning they can't hide behind tradition anymore. The debates continued for another hour. Fierce, complicated, sometimes heated. But they were debates now, not dismissals. The council argued with Sarah as an equal, not as a problem to be solved. When it finally ended, Theron caught up with her in the hallway. You did well in there. They still hate half of what I'm doing, but they're listening. That's new. He fell into step beside her. Are you coming to dinner tonight? Kate and Finn are visiting. Wouldn't miss it, Sarah smiled. Finn wants to show me his school project. Something about historical figures who changed laws. I wonder who he's writing about. Probably you. You're the one who actually changed everything. Theron stopped walking, turning to face his daughter. No, you changed everything. I just finally had the courage to support it. There's a difference. They looked at each other, father and daughter, Alpha and Omega, king and bureau chief. 8 years of pain still lay between them, but now there was also understanding, respect, and the beginnings of trust. For what it's worth, Theron said quietly, I'm proud of you. Not because you're working with me now, but because you never stopped doing what was right, even when it cost you everything. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. I'm not ready to forgive you yet. For choosing the council over me. For making me run. I know. But I'm trying. I see who you're trying to be now. That helps. Then that's enough. He smiled, and it was genuine. More than enough. As they walked through the palace together, the evening sun painted the corridors gold. Through open windows came the sound of the city. Their city, changing slowly but surely. In Riverside, Maya was running a new shelter, fully funded by the royal treasury. In the Northlands, 3 Omegas had filed formal complaints against Alpha Aldrich, and neutral investigators were examining decades of abuse. Across the kingdom, young Omegas were learning they had choices, voices, and a princess who'd proven you could fight systems that seemed unchangeable. And in a classroom across the city, an 8-year-old boy named Finn wrote carefully in his notebook, Sometimes helping one person is how you start helping everyone. Sometimes being brave when you're scared is how things get better. And sometimes the most important thing you can do is call for help when someone needs it, even if you're just a kid and they're a princess. He looked at the photo his teacher had given him, the official bureau portrait showing Sarah standing beside the Alpha King, both of them looking determined and strong. Underneath, in his careful handwriting, Finn wrote, Heroes can be anyone. Even someone you find on a dark street who needs help. Maybe especially them. Epilogue. 2 years after Sarah came home, the council passed the Omega Rights Act by unanimous vote. It took 2 years of debate, compromise, and occasional shouting matches. But it passed. The day Theron signed it into law, Sarah stood beside him in the throne room, surrounded by Omegas from across the kingdom who'd fought for this moment. "This changes everything," Maya whispered, tears streaming down her face. "This is just the beginning," Sarah replied. "We've got more work to do." But that night, when the celebrations ended and the palace quieted, Sarah found her father in his study. He was reading through thank you letters from Omegas, from families, from packs that had implemented the new protections and found their communities stronger for it. "You should read this one," he said, handing her a letter. "It's from Finn." Sarah read it, smiling at the boy's careful handwriting, his serious observations about how things were better now, how his mom said the world was changing in good ways. "He asked if he could visit again," Theron said. "Apparently he wants to discuss his future career plans. He's thinking about law enforcement or social work." "Of course he is," Sarah set down the letter. "He's always wanted to help people. Learned from the best." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, father and daughter, no longer separated by 8 years of pain, but connected by 2 years of healing. "I forgive you," Sarah said suddenly. Theron looked up sharply. "What?" "I forgive you for choosing wrong back then, for making me run, for all of it." She met his eyes. "You spent 2 years proving you learned from it, that you grew, that you chose differently when it mattered. That's enough." Theron's face crumpled. For a moment, the Alpha King disappeared, leaving just a father who'd been given an impossible gift. "Sarah, don't cry, or I'll start crying, and Dr. Reeves said emotional stress is bad for my blood pressure." He laughed through tears. "Since when do you listen to Dr. Reeves? Since she threatened to ban me from the bureau if I didn't take care of myself." They smiled at each other, and something that had been broken 8 years ago finally felt whole. Outside, the moon rose over a kingdom that was changing, where Omegas had voices and choices, where tradition no longer meant oppression, where a little boy had called a king's emergency line and saved not just a princess, but helped save everyone. And in Riverside, in a modest apartment in the North Quarter, Finn Cooper fell asleep with a picture of a princess beside his bed, dreaming of all the people he'd help someday, because someone had taught him that being brave meant helping, even when you're scared. That calling for help wasn't weakness, but wisdom. And that sometimes the most important thing you can do is refuse to accept that suffering is inevitable. Sometimes you can change the world. You just have to be brave enough to try.